Hey, Beastista here, and welcome to week 2 of the VDL Crew battle. So this week we're playing against the Raging Charjabugs, and specifically the coach we're playing is against Rylekt. And so far in week 1 we were 1-2 team wise, in which I was the one that got the win. And this week we're hoping to get our first crew win. And I started off playing as the first team. So, we went in. And here we go. Let's check out the matchup. And so this is the matchup. So looking at their team, they kind of got a really good Tailwind setter in Noivern, and they got a really good Trick Room setter in Mimikyu. And so the big aspect is trying to figure out a way to both deal with Trick Room and Tailwind. And so that's kind of some of the big aspects. However, on top of that, they do have some annoying Pokemon that do really high damage, specifically in Chi-Yu and Sylveon, and Hisuian Samurai to a certain extent. And then that's kind of the big idea. And so I wanted to be able to deal with Mimikyu. I wanted to be able to, get some sort of speed control, both in the fast and the slow end. And I just wanted to be able to deal with some of those big damage dealers in Chi-Yu, Sylveon, and whatnot. And so going with that, we can kind of go over my specific team, which ended up being these 6. We start with Revavroom. So Revavroom defensively completely walls Sylveon. And in addition to that, it threatens to one-shot it with both Spin Out and Gunk Shot. Similarly, Revavroom also walls Mimikyu pretty well, and also threatens to one-shot it once you break its disguise. And then with the Aqua Berry, it can survive a fair bit of moves from Chi-Yu, as long as Chi-Yu is not Scarf or Specs. And then we have the Terra Water specifically to help with some of the other moves, and we also do Terra Blast to hit the Chi-Yu specifically. However, it's not particularly good if we can't get speed control, or if Chi-Yu is Specs specifically, like I mentioned. Next up, we have Vaporeon. Vaporeon's pretty bulky. We decided to just stick with Terra Water because Water is actually a very good defensive typing into their team. The only Pokemon that super threatens, or like super good into the Terra Water Vaporeon, other than the Terra type, is just Appleton, in which Appleton gets hit by the Ice Beam pretty well. Other than that, it's just Ice Beam, Muddy Water, which hits pretty much their entire team for at least neutral. We have the Yawn for, disruption, and then Protect to get a little bit of leftovers recovery, and also, to like stall out Tailwind and Trick Room from them. Next up, we have the Assault Vest Urshifu. Assault Vest Urshifu seems very good this week. Most of their mons that are somewhat annoying for it are on the special side. We are able to threaten a lot of their Pokemon with Drain Punch. And Wicked Blow, and so we don't even need to lower my special defense because this week's Urshifu is a little bit bulkier. And we'll be able to get Sucker Punch for the extra damage and the priority, and then Poison Jab, namely for the Sylveon, and then the Terra Poison, so that we can take moves like Hyper Voice from Sylveon better, but also, it helps for the random fighting move on their team, and it's pretty good defensively because we don't expect to see really any ground Pokemon or ground moves on their team, and not any psychic moves because they don't have psychic Pokemon or a ground Pokemon. Next up, we have Kilowattrel. Kilowattrel is pretty straightforward. We have Cobra Cloak so that their Persian can't fake it out, but also, Icy Wind stuff as well. We got Wind Power so that if we set up our Tailwind, we can get extra damage. Then Thunderbolt, Air Slash Protect. So pretty standard Kilowattrel set with Terra Electric, in all honesty. Next up, we have Salazzle with Focus Sash. Again, fairly similar. Pretty basic with Fake Out, Sludge Bomb, Heat Wave. And then I have Taunt specifically to try to taunt a Mimikyu that says up Trick Room. But other than that, it's Terra Grass specifically so that I can play around possible Rage Powder from the Venonat. However, I don't particularly expect Venonat to come, but I also don't really expect it to Terra Salazzle, so it kind of, ends up being a moot point, of which if they do bring it, I can Terra Grass, taunt the Mimikyu to prevent a hard Trick Room start. And then finally, we have Screamtail. So Screamtail, I had a lot of debate of whether or not I wanted it to be more, bulky or more fast. I decided to go with a booster speed energy Screamtail with Thunderwave, so I should be able to outspeed anything and Thunderwave it. We have Trick Room mainly to undo the Trick Room on my opponent's team, and then I have Dazzling Moon and Shy Shock. I really like Shock this week because it can do really good damage into Muck, and then other than that, it also just gives me good damage into across their board for the most part, in which Dazzling Gleam kind of doesn't do a great chunk of damage. And so, like I said, previously Pair Poison is really nice this week, and that's kind of one of the big reasons Screamtail is it, because I don't expect to see a single ground move, don't expect to see a single psychic move, and in addition to that, it helps me not get poisoned by a like stally toxic Muck, which is somewhat annoying. With that, that's kind of my team, and my game plan is kind of just to go in and try to get some speed control and then just get some early kills. And with that, going into the match, this is what we're given, which we are given the Terra types. With this, we can see a couple things, namely their Chi Terra Fire, which means it's probably going to be a little bit more offensive. Terra Fairy Mimikyu, which means probably also going to be a little bit more offensive. Terra Water, Samurott, also going to be a little bit more offensive. Muck Terra Ghost means that we're expecting probably Shadow Sneak on it or Shadow Claw to help deal with Screamtail. Noivern, Terra Flying, similarly, probably a little bit more offensively. And then it's kind of a lot of offensive Terra types for the most part. And then finally Sylveon, which is Terrifier, so that, I can't hit it with the steel moves as consistently, and it makes Pokemon like my Revavroom even worse with the fact that they have a offensive leaning Chi-Yu and a Sylveon that can Terrifier. But with that, let's get into the match. So here are for game one. Like I said, we saw the Terra types just a second ago in the video, and with that, definitely not a huge fan of Revavroom. I think that I should try to do Tailwind, and so I think Kilowattrel seems like a pretty reasonable lead. And then with that, we also are debating between something like Salazzle or Urshifu, and I decided on Salazzle so that we can taunt if they try to do something with Tailwind. We can fake out if we feel like we need to, and then otherwise it's just a pretty safe pick because it's the Sashmon. And then in the back, we definitely want Urshifu, and Vaporeon's another one I'm very excited to because they are Terrifier on the Sylveon. They also don't have any Terra types that seem good into Vaporeon, and Vaporeon just seems very good defensively this week, and also somewhat pretty good offensively, in which it hits everything on their team pretty well, except for the Samurott specifically. And so with that, let's get into the match. Okay, so they end up leading Mimikyu and Noivern, and so this is a little bit annoying because it's unclear if they go with Trick Room or Tailwind with this. They could obviously go with either. And so the big question that we kind of go in is whether I want to actually click Tailwind myself or not. And I decided that it just seems like a pretty safe Tailwind. And with Noivern, I don't, I can see an argument to try to fake it out to prevent Tailwind, but I decide to not really go for it because I don't want to really risk it. And so I just decided to go for some damage, and I go specifically for the Heat Wave to try to break the Mimikyu disguise and do a little bit of damage. Obviously, I could try to target one, but as we can see, we outspeed. And with this, we should outspeed with Salazzle and get the Heat Wave off. Sadly, we missed the Noivern, which is not too bad. The big one I wanted to hit was Mimikyu to break its disguise, in which we are able to successfully do. So during the match, I honestly forgot which one was faster, and so my Noivern is actually faster than my Kilowattrel was faster than Noivern by just stats. Here we end up seeing they do a Shadow Claw, which does really good damage, and they are able to reveal that their Life Orb as well. And so here I am concerned of a possible Shadow Sneak from Mimikyu, and because I'm concerned of the Shadow Sneak with Mimikyu, I decided to go for the Protect in order to be able to not die this turn, and I try to get a Sludge Bomb into Mimikyu, try to get a little bit of damage on it, so that next turn I can Heat Wave and finish it off. And so we go for the Protect, and Mimikyu also goes for Protect here, which means that my turn is going to be a little bit wasted, and they're probably going to get a free Air Slash off into the Salazzle, doing a pretty good chunk of damage, and sadly I am unable to kind of do any damage here. And I'm in the same position as the last turn in which a Shadow Sneak kills. Here, I don't think there's much I can do to play around it, and so I just go for the Thunderbolt into the Noivern, and I go for a Heat Wave in case Noivern is stashed to finish it off, and also do a pretty good chunk of damage with the Mimikyu as well. I considered the Sludge Bomb into the Mimikyu as well, which could have been, a good chunk of damage, but I don't think it kills from this range, and so I decided for the Heat Wave to play around a stash on the Noivern. And to my surprise, Thunderbolt actually one-shots the Noivern. I did have the wind power boost, so it's not too surprising. However, I end up missing the Heat Wave, which actually would have done a huge chunk of damage. But in the end, it isn't too bad because we kind of just traded our Tailwind setters, and I'm able to get a fairly free switch in to an Urshifu here, which can threaten both this Pokemon and pretty much any other Pokemon they have in the back. And so we bring out the Urshifu, and they bring out the Chi-Yu. And so I'm an Assault Vest, so I should take most things pretty well with this Urshifu. And so with that, I decide I'm just going to Drain Punch the Chi-Yu in case they don't tear it. It's a one-shot. If they do tear up, it helps me recover after I take a hit, and then I can clean it up with Sucker Punch. And the, big decision is whether I want to Terra. I decide to Terra in case they double up with like a Play Rough. And then Salazzle pretty much Sludge Bomb into Mimikyu is the only reasonable play since I'm not switching out, and Heat Wave doesn't seem like the greatest move. They are faster, but this is 100% expected. I have very little speed investment in my Urshifu, and they do Terra into the Terra Fire. This is going to do a pretty good chunk of damage into both my Pokemon, but Urshifu should be pretty fine with its Assault Vest. And we are the Terra Poison. We get the Sludge Bomb off, and we show that they're not Scarf on their Chi-Yu, and with the Beads of Ruin, we're actually able to get the one-shot with the Sludge Bomb, which is great. However, they get a Heat Wave off, double connect, and it kills Salazzle, and it does a huge chunk of damage to Urshifu. This basically guarantees that it's choice specs, because that did way too much damage for a very bulky Assault Vest Urshifu. However, it's not too bad for me because I'm able to do a very good chunk of damage, get a little bit of healing, and Urshifu is now able to get a guaranteed kill on it because we know it cannot protect. And we bring out Vaporeon, and it is in front of the Sylveon, and I'm very happy about my position because they've already Terra'd, which means that Urshifu should be able to take any attack from Sylveon, and I have a very guaranteed kill on Chi-Yu with the Sucker Punch here. And then the pretty much the only question is, do I want to yawn the Sylveon or just go for Muddy Waters right away? And I decide to go for the yawn just because I think it's the safest, most consistent play in case they somehow have a way to kill Urshifu with the Sylveon. We get the crit with the Sucker Punch. That definitely didn't matter, but we are able to get the kill on the Chi-Yu. And Sylveon ends up going here just for... Actually, I'm faster, and I get the yawn off. And they end up just going for the Hyper Voice, which does a very small chunk of damage to Urshifu and not bad damage to Vaporeon, but with the leftovers, definitely, middling. And so at this point, I'm pretty much guaranteed to be able to win. We just go for the Poison Jab, which should get the one-hit KO in case they're a Poison Resist Berry. And I decided to just go for the Muddy Water to get a little bit of extra chip as well. And they are not the Poison Resist Berry, and we're able to get a clean one-hit KO with this Poison Jab, getting a pretty nice Game 1 win. So with that, I'm feeling pretty good. And with that, let's see what happens in Game 2. So here we're for Game 2. The big question is how do we think they're going to adjust? And that I'm not sure of. I considered possibly just leading the Screamtail, which is a good way to punish the Noivern by just getting a Thunder Wave and then, killing its partner or killing it before it moves. But the big question is how do I think they're going to change? And I think that there's a good chance they bring Muck, which Screamtail, Terra Poison Screamtail seems like a reasonable way to deal with that. And I decided to just kind of lead with Urshifu and Screamtail, mainly because I think Urshifu's offense is good. Screamtail's good defensive or support mon of speed control. Vaporeon is unquestionably should be coming because they seem to be leaning on the Terrifier Chi-Yu, and also it helps with like Samurott and even Sylveon to a certain extent. And then the big question is, do we want any of the last Pokemon, Revavroom, because their choice specs on the Chi-Yu looks not great, and so it's definitely one of the other ones. And I decided to bring just Salazzle because Salazzle seems like the most consistent one because it gives me some fake out support. It has Focus Sash, so it's guaranteed to take at least one move, and it's pretty fast. Um, but with that, let's get into the match. So they end up leading Chi-Yu Noivern, which is actually a little bit sad because if I actually just led the exact same lead as game one, I feel like I would have been in an amazing position because I could just fake out the Chi-Yu and set up Tailwind and then get double knockout in turn two. However, with this, we're not in the worst shape because we should be able to take a Heat Wave and, basically get a pretty clean kill on the Chi-Yu. And so the play is probably just to go for the Drain Punch of the Chi-Yu and then Thunder Wave, one of the two. However, I end up kind of later on thinking right here that, oh, maybe I should just read that they're going to set up Tailwind and click Trick Room instead. And with that, I also said, oh, but if they set up, I also considered the possibility of them clicking Overheat with Chi-Yu instead of Heat Wave, and which Overheat will kill Urshifu. And so here I'm a little bit sad because I kind of made the read that they're going to go for the Tailwind, and I expected a Overheat, but instead of playing around it, I kind of just stuck it in, and I could have easily switched in Vaporeon to take an Overheat here, which would have been great shape. And the big question is, did they go for the Terra Fire Heat Wave, or are they going for the actual Overheat like I expected? And like I said, this is kind of, one of those I thought about this after I already made my move with Urshifu. And they do, in fact, set up Tailwind, which is good, which means the Trick Room play on is great. And they did go for Overheat, and it does connect. And it does get the one-hit KO onto the Urshifu, sadly. So with that, we would have gotten an amazing turn one play if we had actually made the hard read and switched in the Vaporeon, but we're still not in bad shape because we did get the Trick Room up despite them setting up Tailwind, which puts us in really good shape because we're pretty much able to get Vaporeon in for free. It threatens to one-hit KO this Noivern because it can't Terra, and their Chi-Yu is kind of forced to switch out. And so the big question is do we want to Psyshock into the Chi-Yu spot because it does the most damage? However, the downside of Psyshock specifically is they do have a Dark Pokemon. So if they bring in Samurott, Psyshock could do nothing. And so I strong debate on Dazzling Gleam versus Psyshock. And I really wanted to do Psyshock just to, kind of guarantee a good chunk of damage if it was not Samurott, but I decided to go Dazzling Gleam to play around the Samurott, and it's kind of just the most consistent play as well because it doesn't do that much fewer damage because I should kill Noivern. And they do switch out Chi-Yu as expected into Muck, which means the Psyshock would have been amazing however, we do get the kill on Noivern here, and though it doesn't do as much damage, we still get a little bit of chip damage with the Dazzling Gleam onto the Muck. However, like I said, the Muck is definitely the worst switch in for Dazzling Gleam versus the Psyshock, because Psyshock would hit it on the physical side as well. So they bring out Mimikyu, which is not too bad. And here, pretty much the play is whether or not we just want to Muddy Water. Muddy Water seems like the obvious play. I want to Psyshock into the Muck, and I think that Terra Poison makes the most sense to both avoid a Shadow Claw and a Poison Jab from the two Pokemon in front of it, and just keeping Screamtail alive seems like a pretty safe play with my Terra here. And we tear the Poison It, and they protect the Mimikyu, which is a little bit annoying because we're not going to be able to break its disguise. However, not too bad because we're able to hopefully do a pretty good chunk of damage with both this Muddy Water and this Psyshock. One thing we do see is that Muck is still faster in Trick Room than my Screamtail, which definitely makes sense. However, Psyshock does a very good chunk of damage, and with the Citrus Berry, it's definitely not in range of Muddy Water, but it should be in range of another Psyshock. And so here I was taunted, so there's really no play other than just to go for that Muddy Water, and I decided to try to go for the kill on the Mimikyu, or on the Muck. However, they protect the Muck. However, I still feel like we're in pretty good shape because neither of these Pokemon are actually threatening my Pokemon particularly for huge chunks of damage. And we're kind of able to just, slowly chip them. However, sadly, we miss a Muddy Water on the Mimikyu, so it still doesn't break its disguise. However, as we can see, the Shadow Claw, though doing a reasonable chunk of damage, is not doing massive damage. And now they have their Tailwind up, which is a little bit awkward for me, and it's the last turn of Trick Room. So I considered going for a Thunder Wave to kind of get them in an awkward position once Trick Room's over. However, I decided it's probably best to just try to kill the Muck rather than do anything fancy with the Thunder Waves. And they just go for a Drain Punch, which gives them a little bit of healing, but in the end should not be that big of a deal because if I double connect, I should be able to kill it even with the extra health. And Muck definitely looks like it's in range of Side Shock. We break the disguise and get an accuracy drop on Mimikyu, which could be big later. They go for a Play Rough, which ends up doing more damage than I would like on the Vaporeon, because now it looks like it might be in range of like a Heat Wave. However, we are able to get the nice clean kill onto Muck here. Now, Trick Room is over. However, we do have a nice speed control metric with the Scream Tail and Thunder Wave. And we do have a completely healed Pokemon in the back with Focus Sash. And so here, there's really only one reasonable play. Kind of. One of the plays would be Protect. However, I am still taunted, so I can't Protect. I check it. I wanted to Protect. Could not. So because I can't Protect, Muddy Water and then Thunder Wave into the Chi-Yu is really the only reasonable play. Side Shock, would do some damage to Chi-Yu, but having the ability to outspeed with the Vaporeon and get a hit off into it definitely seems like an important thing. So we get the Thunder Wave off, successfully connect it, doing well with Thunder Wave thus far this season. This should let Vaporeon outspeed. They go for the Shadow Claw, which now puts Screamtail in probably range of a Heat Wave. And we connect the Muddy Water into the Chi-Yu, which is the important one. And now it should be in range of any attack. And they do double connect with the Heat Wave, which is in range of the double knockout here. It's definitely a little bit sad that, we didn't hit the Mimikyu with that Muddy Water. However, we are in pretty good shape since Salazzle has a Focus Sash, and it should outspeed both Pokemon. And from here, we just bring in the Salazzle. So targeting down Chi-Yu, get the kill. This is the kind of obvious play because Chi-Yu can't Protect. We know its choice specs. And I'm not 100% sure if Sludge Bomb will one-shot Mimikyu, but with a chip of Life Orb damage, I think there's a really good chance. And so the only real concern is Mimikyu attacking and then having Shadow Sneak. However, it protects, which is the best possible case because we're able to get the kill on Chi-Yu. And now there's a good chance that even if they do have Shadow Sneak, it doesn't matter with that. And so now we just go for the Sludge Bomb into Mimikyu, make sure we don't miss, and we should be able to win this game because we are sashed. So even if we don't kill, there's a good chance we should be able to beat them next turn. And sadly, we end up just missing out on the KO, and they end up hitting us with Shadow Claw and killing themselves with the Life Orb. So this has ended up being great. We ended up getting another 2-0 win and win our second game of the second match of the season. And in addition to that, one of our teammates, Solanor, ended up actually winning a little bit after my match, and so we ended up winning. We had won week 2 of the crew, which is really nice. But overall, the match ended up going well. I think that Urshifu would do really well game 1. Screamtail did really well game 2, and then Vaporeon just overall was good in both the games. So really happy to see Vaporeon put in some work. Sad to see Rubber Room not come, but definitely I think it was the right call not to bring it in the match. So with that, thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time.